I bring to you this week our next look at the warnings that Father Malachi Martin gave. And in all this talk of synodality, with the Vatican releasing its guidelines on the Synod on Synodality, I thought it would be prudent to review something that Father Malachi Martin warned about. You may have noticed a strange tendency where a great number of bishops are applauded when they become bishops. When they were priests, they were thought to be conservative. They would teach the faith. And then as soon as they become bishops, they embrace the errors of the age. Why is that? It goes back to an error called collegiality. Malachi Martin here will explain it to you, and you see it in all this talk of synodality lately. It is something that should be of great concern to everyday Catholics, because many of the problems in the church today come from bishops not understanding what their role in the hierarchy actually is. Here's Father Malachi Martin in his interview with Bernard Jansen in 1995 on the subject of collegiality and conservative bishops.
We have to go back before they become cardinals, before they become bishops. They start off having lost their faith or never having had it, perhaps. I do not know. Each individual case is different. But we have a set of bishops now who do contain some saints. There's no doubt about that. I can think of 2 or 3 in the American bishops, by the way, among them, whom I would consider good bishops, and one of them certainly is saintly. But the majority? No, I couldn't guarantee the faith of the majority of these people. Otherwise, they would not behave as they're behaving. They couldn't behave as they're behaving.
Now, what has happened? Because these men primarily are older men now, having risen to the rank that they have. They probably were trained in good seminaries, let's say the 1950s or earlier. What happened? Didn't they have the faith at that time?
I don't think so. I don't think you lose your faith as easily as all that. There was a loss of faith way back somewhere, and their access to high office only confirmed their loss of faith. Besides that, as you know, the Vatican Council II, issued a document called Lumen Gentium, the light of the Gentiles, and it concerns the constitution of the Church. What is the Church? It answers that question. And it made a huge change. And let me give you a picture. All right. It is November 1964. And there's going to be a big vote the following day in the council. And that vote is to state that the bishops of the church share the same jurisdiction and authority as the Pope over the universal church as well as over their particular dioceses. That's the vote. And it's an important vote. An aide to the Pope, who now is a bishop, Bishop McGee, not then a bishop, but working at the council, went down to a conference room that had been used by the periti, the theologians, because he had left either his breviary or a comb or something down there. He wanted to pick it up again. And he scuffed on the ground, he scuffed 2 or 3 sheets of paper. And he picked them up just out of interest, and he found that they were in the handwriting of a very well-known peritus, theologian, German, an Austrian actually, and that they outlined the strategy by which the bishops were going to take the jurisdiction of the Pope over for themselves, in virtue of this vote. So he dashed up to Paul VI. It was late at night. Paul VI, typically, Hamlet, said, well, I can't stop the vote now, and the vote is majority for this strange doctrine they have, but I'll write a special note, a nota explicativa, an explanatory note. Now the vote took place, and the vote, the document was approved, and the document states that the bishops share in the universal jurisdiction and power of the Pope over the Church Universal as well as over their dioceses, and that puts the bishops on a par with the Pope.
Is this what is sometimes referred to as the principle of collegiality?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And does this principle have any precedent in church history?
None. None. There is no college of bishops in the church tradition. There's a college of cardinals, and it is not even apostolic, but there's that tradition. There's no college of bishops. The relationship of bishops to the Pope is one-on-one, individual to individual. But this was introduced deliberately because if the Pope becomes just a bishop merely. And he whatever power he has is shared by everybody else. You can see what happens. Well, we know what happened, Bernard, because since then the big change has taken place in the Church. You know, before Vatican Council, you could, if you wanted to have an image of the Church, it was this: a central hub with pipes going out to the various provinces of the Church throughout the world, north, south, east, and west. And those pipes conveyed instruction and admonition and advice, and they brought to Rome zeal and obedience and acquiescence and questions and queries, etc. But that was the center. There was only one hub, and Rome was the center. Now, every diocese is a hub all by itself. And the bishops, it's easier for the Pope to remove a parish priest than it is to move a bishop nowadays, because the bishop is now part of, they founded then regional and national conferences of bishops. And the National Conference of Catholic Bishops in the United States, the NCCB, and it has a political arm called the USCC, the United States Catholic Conference. They're totally independent of the Pope, and they make their own laws. They decided to have communion in the hand. They decided to have altar girls. They've decided to have ordained female deaconesses, to have deaconesses ordained, and they're going to have them too, whether we like it or not, and you're going to have them in Canada. So the bishops have seized the reins. They now say that they have the same power as the Pope over the Church Universal. So this document was passed. Paul VI wrote this explanatory note and said this must be added to the document. It's never added to the main text of the document. It's put at the back, and nobody ever refers to it ever again. Nobody ever refers to the nota explicativa. And the result is that everybody says, well, the Vatican Council too, it decided the bishops were the equal of the Pope, and they can decide for the Universal Church and make decisions. They haven't got to ask the Pope about things any longer, and indeed they don't.
Well, then in this situation, you have something similar, let's say, to the Church of England, where the Archbishop of Canterbury is only the first among equals, and he has no real authority outside his own diocese.
None, and he hasn't got any. Or like, for instance, the Archbishop of Constantinople, the Patriarch of Constantinople, the same thing. And it's reducing, it's a Protestant idea. By the way, it was a heresy. It was called Gallicanism. And it was condemned more than once, and it was condemned at the Vatican Council, First Vatican Council. But they got it through this time. And the difficulty is that now that is the mode today, and the bishops know they're independent, and they say the Vatican Council has made them independent. Yes, they venerate the Pope because that's the most ancient see, and it's the see of Peter, and that sort of thing. But they have lost all reverence and respect and obedience. Now that's the difficulty with the bishops today. The result is that we are now faced with the fact that every diocese is a little fiefdom in itself, and every bishop considers himself to be totally independent, and therefore his clergy do. And we see this again and again in the United States. It's rampant. Everybody, there's a priest called Father DiNardo in the Pittsburgh diocese, who's supposed to be a theologian, and he gave an interview lately in which he said that just don't listen to the Pope, just listen to the bishop. He's the man who has all the authority, and that is the belief today. And so the power and the prestige and the authority of Peter, the Pope, has been diminished to nothing, That's the main difficulty we have today with...
Yes, at Vatican II, they usurped authority. The Pope at the time tried to stop it. He failed. This should not surprise anybody. And it goes a long way to explain why one diocese to another, driving through one diocese and going to another, if you go to Mass at each of them, it can be very different experiences. You have your bishop teach you very different things on various hot-button moral issues. And Rome does nothing. Because eventually, even the Pope's bought into it. Curious what you think about all this, so let me know in the comments, please. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. And as always, pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.